There are around 7.8 billion people on the planet now, and each needs about 1.4 kilograms of food on average per day, not including water. That means we require about 3.7 billion metric tons of food a year to feed everyone. Hi friend, you are watching Dani TV and today we will discuss about the food needs of the world. Can we, without clearing any new farmland, we could feed 2 Earths worth of people. By doing better supply chain organization, improve soil management, and a little creativity would yield lots more food without adding to emissions. By the end of this year, 270 million people could be living in famine conditions. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, up from an already staggering 149 million before COVID-19, add in the disruptive effect of climate change and our planet ever increasing population, and we are looking at difficult times ahead. By 2050, the year when a growing list of nations aim to have a zeroed out their contribution to climate change, the United Nations projects the global population will be 9.7 billion, on its way to topping out at 11 billion in 2100. The pressure to produce more food, or at least to make more money from agriculture, is driving nations to clear forests and waterland for farms and divert scant fresh water to grow crops in the desert. But is that really necessary? Could we increase the food supply while also protecting precious wild resources? Given the number of people on earth and the amount each on typically eat, could we feed them all using just our existing agriculture infrastructure? The answer turned out to be yes, and then some. Hypothetically, at least we could feed the population of 2 Earths without clearing a single new acre of land. Here is how we did get there. At the moment, the world produces about 4 billion metric tons of food per year, but about 1.3 billion tons goes to waste. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, one international study led by researchers from the University of Edinburgh put the numbers even higher, suggesting that as much as 44% of agriculture production is never consumed. Developing nations waste as much food as developed ones. What's different is how it's wasted. In rich countries, more than 40% of the losses occur at the retail and consumer levels, while some are trying to limit those losses by diverting expiring groceries to the poor. Safety regulations often leave restaurants with little choice but to discard uneaten food. In poorer countries where households waste far less, the United Nations estimates that more than 40% of crop losses occur between the fields and store shelves. For example, in India, some of the biggest losses occur during the harvest itself, and fresher produce often rots on the way to market because of transportation delays and lack of refrigeration. Research by ISRI, a global geographic data supplier, suggests that if we factor in wasted potential from ill-used agricultural land, then only 30% to 50% of what we could grow ends up in our stomachs. Most of the potential gains in production would come from farming the land we have more efficiently, through mechanization, better seeds and crop choices, and improved irrigation. Some waste and inefficiency is inevitable. Poor harvests, pests, bad weather, and logistical difficulties are just function of an imperfect system. But in a perfect world, using history estimates along with estimates of food waste from the United Nations and others, we could supply 9 billion metric tons of food a year, or 2.4 times as much as we would need to feed every person on the planet. It's possible to increase the world's food supply without relying on improved efficiency or reduced waste. According to the research cited by the United Nations, 2.2 billion acres of degraded former farmland could be restored through more responsible use of fertilizer and irrigation. Some of that land would be used for reforestation, but even so, the rest could produce about 500 million tons of food annually. Better eating habits could also help. Research from Italy suggests that as much as 140 million metric tons of excess food, enough to feed more than 270,000 people, gets consumed each year, leading to obesity and chronic health problems such as high blood pressure and type. Not all edible crops are destined for the food shelf. Almost 600 million hectares of land is used to grow crops for ethanol. For instance, that means vast quantities of corn, wheat, rice, sorghum, sugar cane, cassava, and sugar beet are going into cars, fuel tanks instead of people's mouths. The move towards electric and hydrogen powered vehicles could take a significant chunk out of this market. If if all of the land were converted back to food production, a big assumption, but go with it, we could feed 280 million more people, according to one study from the University of Virginia. Finally, there is the food we grow to feed the animals we eat. Almost half the grain in the world goes to feed livestock. According to the United Nations, animal husbandry is an ancient part of many cultures. Livestock are used to produce other things besides meat, such as wool and dairy products, and many cattle, especially in developing nations, consume pasture or vegetable matter not eaten by humans. Still, reducing meat consumption by half could free up a quarter of the world grain supply for humans. Any number of combination of the action described here would put global food output well above the 7.4 billion metric tons needed to feed almost 16 billion people. Of course, there are just back of the envelope calculation, politics, economics, culture, and commerce all plays major parts in development and trade, ensuring that no agriculture system will ever be optimal. But even with more realistic targets for reducing waste, reclaiming lost farmland, and redistribution of our food supply, we have more than enough land to make care of growing global family. That's not the only benefit that could come from better agriculture management. Animals alone, sheep, goats, and cows account for at least 2.5% of global greenhouse gas production. Eating less of them means raising fewer of them, so emission would shrink. Meanwhile, the United Nations estimates that restoring carbon and nutrients to degraded soil for cultivation would cost a relatively reasonable 300 billion and suck up the equivalent of all our carbon emission for the next 2 decades, buying us precious time to bring the rest of the global economy in line with net zero. Average amount of food consumed per person in per year by continent. Europe consumes 780.6 kg per person per annum. North America consumes 861.8 kg per person per year. Asia 679.7 kg per person per annum. South America consumes food of 668.3 kg per person per annum. Africa consumes 540.8 kg per person per annum. Oceania consumes 769.1 kg per person per annum. Alongside top 5 most consumed foods by continent. In Europe, most consumed foods are milk, wheat, potatoes, pig and sugar. In North America, milk, wheat, chicken, potatoes and cattle are most consumed foods by continent. In Asia, rice, wheat, milk, potatoes and seafoods are most consumed. In South America, milk, wheat, rice, chicken and sugar are most consumed foods. In Africa, cassava, wheat, maize, rice and yams are most consumed foods. In Oceania, milk, wheat, potatoes, chicken and sugar are most consumed. Most consumed meat by continent. In Europe, pig is the most consumed meat. In North America, chicken is the most consumed meat. In Asia, seafood is the most consumed meat. In South America, chicken. In Africa, seafood. And in Oceania, chicken is the most consumed meat. Hopefully, friend, you would have liked this video. If you get some more information about food and world population, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Thank you.